Okay, Audrey,
Yes.
well, I'm going to start letting everyone in. So once everyone is in, I will tell you to go ahead, okay?
Okay.
All right, all set to go.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Welcome to the Monday, June 8th, 2020 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. As a courtesy during the proceedings, we ask that you place yourselves on mute as sound transfers easily and can be disruptive. Please note that there are several ways to submit comments during this meeting. You may send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the evening, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. Secondly, you may also submit your comment using chat in Zoom by clicking on the chat button located at the bottom of your screen. Staff will then read the comment at the appropriate time. Lastly, you may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the participant button located at the bottom of your screen and then click Raise Hand. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom meeting by phone can dial *9 to raise a hand. So agenda item number 2, we have roll call. The record should note that 6 members of our commissioners are present this evening. Our Commissioner Sargent is absent. Moving on to agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. We have no meeting minutes to review at this time. Moving on to agenda item number 4, approval of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are no changes to the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any recusals for tonight's items?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
no
Commissioner Toronis?
recusal, but I would just like to note, and I can repeat this at the item if necessary, but for item 8B, 612 Burlingame Avenue, I wasn't present at the design review study meeting, but I did read the minutes and watch the video of the hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Toronis. All right, so no recusals I see, so I'll move on to agenda item number 5, public comments for non-agenda items. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, which is the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. A timer will sound at the end of the time. I may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers as applicable. Please speak clearly into the microphone. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda this evening? I do not see any raised hands. Do we see anything coming in through our other channels?
So our other channels, we have an email box at publiccomment@burlingame.org. We do not have any emails in there right now for this item. And then also people can send chat through Zoom, but we do not have anyone sending a comment through chat. So I believe we are clear for this item.
Okay, great, thank you. Then moving on, we'll go to agenda item number 6 and number 7 together. There are no study items or consent calendar items for this evening. So with that, I will move on to agenda item number 8. which is our regular action items. So we have item 8A, 2625 Martinez Drive. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to know any ex parte communications regarding this project?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner, is it
Yeah, sorry.
Toronis?
Yeah, thank you. I did visit with neighbors at 2609 Truesdale, at 2621 Truesdale. And I'm sorry, there's one other, and 2613 Truesdale, just to visit, to view the story poles from their properties.
Thank you. Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I also visited with the, and was allowed access to the house at 2609 Truesdale. And I had previously met with the property owner at 2613 Truesdale, although we did not go in the house, we just went in the backyard.
Thank you. Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I just wanted to note for the record that I had a Zoom meeting with the applicant and his architect, and their architect did not discuss the merits of the project.
Commissioner Camerado?
I actually had a discussion with the applicant. I also went to I think it's 2613's backyard in the prior meeting, and had an email exchange with the owner of the one with the affidavit, but did not gain access.
Okay, Commissioner Schmid?
Yes, I had a Zoom call with the applicant and the architect to discuss the comments from the last meeting.
Thank you. And then I'll just add my own notes. I did visit 2613 Truesdale, was invited into the home and was able to view the effects on their view from inside the house. As well, I visited 2609 Truesdale and met with the owner and was able to look at the view aspects from their backyard, and was invited in by Mrs. Lines of 7 Castro Court to step inside and take a look at implications for their property from inside their house. So, oops, sorry. Let the record note at this time that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear the staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant proposes to replace the existing one-story single-family dwelling and attached garage at 2625 Martinez Drive with a new two-story single-family dwelling and attached garage. The Planning Commission last reviewed this application on April 27th and continued the item to allow the applicant to respond to various concerns that were raised with the project. The applicant submitted revised plans dated May 27th, 2020, and a response letter dated June 1st, 2020 to address the Commission's concerns. The applicant has prepared a presentation which will follow after questions of staff. I'll note the correspondence that has been received for this application. The staff report packet includes 8 letters. In addition, there have been 2 communications received after the staff report was distributed. These include correspondence from Mark Hudak received on Saturday, June 5th, representing the applicants, and correspondence from neighbor Mariana Carl received on Sunday, June 7th. Both of these communications were forwarded to the Planning Commission today. As mentioned, the applicant has prepared a presentation, but first I'm available for questions of staff.
Sorry, I was muted. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, I don't see any, so I'm going to now open the public hearing. Would the applicant please step forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about the project?
Hi, this is Leonard. I'm the architect for the project at 2625 Martinez. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, is this the time that we make our presentation?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. If you don't mind, if we could have a few extra minutes just to address some of the neighbor view issues, we would appreciate it as well. We added some extra slides to our show.
Okay.
How do I proceed to the next slide, or do I have to prompt someone for that?
Yeah, why don't you just state next slide and then our host will.
Okay, great.
press it.
So first and foremost, thank you to the commissioners for your valuable feedback from all the meetings, but particularly the last round. We really appreciate your feedback regarding looking at ways to reduce our overall height and mass, as well as the question of how we might fit into the neighborhood. To address those questions directly and to kind of review the major revisions that we've done since the last meeting, we've put together a short presentation that we hope speak to those items, as well as trace the evolution of the project from the beginning. And so this, of course, is an aerial view of our neighborhood. Next. From the get-go, before we even started the project, we took time to study the neighborhood fabric, and we noticed in all the neighbors next to us take on a plan and layout and massing that resembles a lowercase h. And this lowercase h constitutes a forward attached garage wing, a central recess entry, and an opposing wing that has a front wing and a rear wing that extends into the rear yard. Next slide, please. So of course, we want to be good neighbors and responsible designers. So rather than put a McMansion footprint, so to speak, and ignore the neighborhood fabric and infill the entire lot, we really sought to continue this fabric as much as possible. Next slide. As you can see, this is a footprint of our proposed plan in context, and we really worked hard to lay out the home to respond to the lowercase h typology of the neighborhood fabric. And what does that mean? I think what that means is we're trying to kind of maintain the same relationship and rhythm to the street, the same location on site, relative location and neighbor spacing to our neighbors, and the scale and complexity of the plan and massing moves of our project. We want to echo the neighbors as well. Next slide. As you can see, our garage placement is continuing the existing pattern, and our garage is set back further than the existing home, actually. Next slide. We're continuing the recessed central entry. Next slide. And of course, the opposing or the wing on the opposite side, which has a wing that extends to the rear yard. We feel all these things are very real, tangible, physical qualities that contribute to the neighborhood fabric, and we're working hard to try to continue that. Next slide. From an elevation and material standpoint, we really appreciated the softening comments that happened in the study session. And so we used that as opportunity to try to take cues from the neighborhood even further. If you'll notice, a lot of the surrounding homes, the primary materials are smooth stucco, smooth cement plaster, and horizontal siding of various colors. They usually reserve masonry or fine scale tile accent for the front entry. And we've actually tried to do the same, where smooth stucco, horizontal siding is our primary elements, and we're reserving a finer scale tile accent at our entry as well. Next slide. We also noticed that in the surrounding homes, a lot of the ranch homes, of course, have a very long horizontal expression. And the windows, they carry that logic to the windows as well. A lot of their windows are long horizontal band windows, sliding and fixed type, usually divided into 2 or 3 divisions. They use opaque panels or shutters, so to speak, to extend that horizontality. And several of the homes use thin trim to group separate punch windows into longer horizontal compositions. And we've tried to do the same, adopt this concept and translate it into our project as well. Next slide. With the height reduction that we've done, and with our articulation of windows, we feel we're carrying on this tradition of long horizontal band windows, grouping them together with solid panels and trim. We've elongated the bottom left window at the guest room, we've elongated that window actually since the last meeting to try to get, again, more horizontal proportion, echoing more of the existing windows in the neighborhood. And obviously trying to keep, even though we're one of the few first homes that have a second story, keeping a long horizontal roof line, as well as, of course, using stucco wood siding as our primary materials, and then the tile accent as our entry as well. Next slide. Obviously, we took to heart the height and bulk, and I think like everyone, we're a bit surprised by the story poles as well. And so working with our team, working with Galen and Tina, we really attacked everything that we could to try to squeeze inches anywhere we could to lower the height of the building. Next slide. And so what we were able to do, the clients have compromised quite a bit on their ceiling heights, accepting something they were hoping would be higher, but we also acknowledge the context of the one-story neighborhood and are doing all we can to try to work towards that. So with reduced ceiling heights, with some creativity in using steel for some of our structural sandwiches, some creativity in mechanical systems, and submerging our crawl space, we've managed to reduce the height by 2'3" and 3'5" across the board for the entire building. We've lowered the first floor volumes proportionately. Next slide. And just next slide. And just to summarize, our plate heights are now 8'10" and 8'3" respectively for first and second floor, and our overall home is almost 8 feet and 9 feet below the allowable height limit. We also didn't stop looking at that. We also found an opportunity to pull in our building. We actually reduced the square footage of our building by pulling in the stair volume, the 2-story stair volume on the left side, to further decrease bulk and height and mass. And so if you could go to the next slide. This as the rendering shows, the building is really quite low and horizontal, accentuating the horizontality of the surrounding ranch homes. We've worked with our landscape architect since the last meeting to really develop the front yard, adding in more planting. We have 2 street trees, increasing the size of the trees and the planting to really nestle the home into the fabric and really provide some nice privacy as well as screening as well to situate the building. Next slide. And this is a site elevation showing context with our adjacent neighbors, and the dashed line is a max allowable height limit. And so I think what we've achieved, hopefully, with the latest height reduction is hopefully the building reads more like we're really trying to push the building as far down as we reasonably can. And so we feel that the site elevation portrays we're really more moving towards maybe a 1.5 to 1 3/4 story volume, which goes hand in hand, I think, with in terms of height fitting into the neighborhood. The lower we can get, obviously, relative to the 1.5 story ranch homes adjacent, I think the more we can feather into that context from a height perspective. Next slide. We also were notified recently that one of our neighbors on Truesdale, I believe it was 2617, submitted a photo and a potential view issue, and we studied that photo and were able to study that in Google Earth. And what we found is that we feel it seems like the view is coming from a very secondary window on the side yard located behind the garage. You can see from the dashed cyan line. I guess one would think that the primary views or the primary windows to their space might be more along the rear yard, but this one seems to could be coming from the side yard window right behind the garage. Next slide. As you can see, there are roofs in the foreground, and as the photo shows, there's some trees obscuring the view already, but next slide. These kind of Google Earth aerials kind of show the nature of the window, its relation to the neighbor and side yard, and the view angle looking out. Next slide. And so this is the view that they submitted. I think you can see the window frame on the right side. And so just extrapolating the view from the window and a direct sight line to our property, you can tell that this view is highly oblique to the window. It's taken in a highly oblique and zoomed in nature, and it's obscured by some trees existing. Next slide. And so we did a little study. Obviously, we don't have the opportunity to go into their house, but from the aerial, next slide, whatever the space is, the garage is for sure in that corner. And so next slide. Normally one's relationship with a window, if you're looking straight out, that view is accessible to the deeper interior spaces if the view is oriented in a more perpendicular fashion. Next slide. This, I mean, tracing it to our property, the view angle seems to be very oblique, as the cyan line shows. And this oblique angle, coupled with the proximity to the garage, seems to imply that it may not be a very prominent view within the home, or at least of a very secondary and incidental nature. Next slide. And so just to summarize from, hopefully we're trying to look at this objectively, but as a secondary window in a side yard, as a very specific zoomed in oblique view, seemingly at the face of the window, it's a distant view obscured by trees and roofs in the foreground. And given that our home is already 8 to 9 feet below the allowable height limit, we hope the commissioners would give that consideration, and we feel that we are minimally affecting any views that they might have. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And so just to summarize, from a neighborhood, just in a very broad brush, from a neighborhood pattern relationship to street, to neighbors, plan layout and massing, from a material standpoint, from a window articulation standpoint, and with the latest revisions, with some further detailing, landscaping, and significant height reduction, we feel like we've attacked this design issue from many fronts to try to minimize our impact and integrate ourselves with the neighborhood as much as possible, and hopefully be a responsible precedent for how low two-story homes can be integrated in the neighborhood in the future. That's kind of our presentation, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the very thorough presentation. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Charones?
Thank you. Leonard, thank you for the presentation. Honestly, I think that the height reductions that you've made are rather substantive, but to get right to the issues of the views and the hillside area permitting, we received other letters from neighbors with view concerns, particularly 2609, 2613, and 2621 Truesdale. My question is, have you had a chance to visit those, in particular 2609 Truesdale?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I have not personally had a chance to visit 2609. Is that one of the neighbors who submitted a letter previously in the last round?
Well, we received theirs dated April 13th. So yeah, it might have come before the last round, but with issues of trying to gain access, et cetera. Anyway, that you may not have been able to take a look, but my point being is I think that there's an issue there in terms of the hillside area permitting. We can talk about that amongst the commission, but I'm seeing view blockage there, quite frankly. So I think that there may be an issue. So I just wanted to know if you've had a chance to take a look personally. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question. Have the story poles been adjusted to reflect the currently proposed drawings?
Yes, it should be. It's probably no relative reference point, but yes, it has been.
Okay, thank you. All right, so do we have, I don't see any other questions from the commissioners. So do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Please raise your hand, or yes, Jason Sawyer.
I would.
So let's start with Jason Sawyer, and then followed by, it looks like Sherry Lyons also had mentioned herself. So we can start with Jason Sawyer, and I will be timing. It's 3 minutes, and It's on my iPhone, so if we don't hear it, I'll just make it known that 3 minutes has elapsed.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to know, was there any attempt by the architect or the owner to contact us to access the viewing of the backyard to see the angle? There was some attempts to talk about other neighbors with oblique views, I think was his point, but was there any attempt to contact us on his part? Because I don't have any correspondence asking access to see our viewpoint.
Leonard, would you like to reply?
Sorry, which neighbor is this, may I ask?
We're at 2609 Truesdale.
Yeah, sorry, we weren't aware that we had the opportunity to even ask to go look at the neighbors' views. Personally, we thought that was only allowed for the commissioners.
Jason, do you have any other questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sherry Lyons?
Yes, good evening. I just wanted to beg to differ about the story poles being changed. I was wondering when they were changed because they don't seem any different to us. So, a message to Mr. Ng. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, we submitted the story pole plan to the story pole crew. It's been certified by the engineer, and also a copy of the story pole plan has been submitted to Michelle, our planner at the city. Galen and Tina, the owners, have been coordinating that effort directly, but I believe the story poles have, they're definitely been revised, and I believe it happened at least a few weeks ago.
Okay. It doesn't look any different to us, so that's what I was wondering about that.
I think it without we actually a little bit unorthodox, but we contemplated or discussed with Michelle, our planner, as well as I believe Ruben and the story pollers, whether to keep a reference point of the previous, but everyone seemed to say that might cause more confusion, and so they just lowered it 2 to 3 feet or more. But there's no artifact, so to speak, of the previous height, which makes it hard to compare.
Thank you for that clarification, Leonard.
Thank you.
Sherry, do you have any other questions?
No, I just differ. I beg to differ. I don't think that the highest point has been changed. So I know that you were out to look at that view with me today, Claire. So we looked at it and figured that the changes that had been made would reduce the height that we're looking at right now, which was very satisfactory, but it doesn't look like they've changed the story poles, so it's confusing to us. I just wanted to make note of that.
Let me just clarify for the record. I have a note here that the certification for the story poles were, the date of that certification was May 26th. Okay. So it may be that it's just subtle, but that is when the certification was dated.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other public questions? Is there anything that we're receiving through email or anything in the chat box? No?
Let's see. I do have an email, and it is signed by Robert Elliston, 2606 Martinez Drive. It reads, in the photos presented by Leonard, a lower branch of the tree in the photo obscures views of the bay. That is easily removed, and the view of the bay is substantial, even though it may be oblique. If the branch is removed, it shows that the story poles obscure more of the bay view. And that is signed Robert Elliston. That is the only email that we have in the public comment at burlingame.org. And I am not seeing any chats. If any members of the public still want to speak, they could also use the raised hand function on Zoom. But otherwise, I do not see any more requests for public comment.
All right, and Leonard, we're going to close the public hearing at this time unless there's something else you wanted to comment about pertaining to the neighbors' questions.
I'm not sure how the forum works. Is there a chance for us to speak up again if we raise our hands, or this is there's no more opportunity to speak if necessary?
Only if it's specific to answering a question or comment that the commissioners may bring up, and if we feel that there's something that you could clarify.
Well, I guess with regards to the last comment just made, I think the view at 2617 has to be looked at in overall context, like location of window, the obliqueness. I would say even without the tree, if you study the photo, a lot of the netting is actually covering a tree as opposed to the bay. And so if you look at even the zoomed in view, I would say we're clipping maybe the bottommost portion, but there's still a fairly substantive portion of bay all around, and the views to the East Bay and mountains beyond are still preserved. So just to answer that direct question for now, that would be our response.
Thank you. And I see that Galen has raised his hand.
Yes, appreciate the time. Just in response, I had with regard to Commissioner Taronis's comments about the other homes, and to echo Leonard's statement, we weren't aware that we could contact the neighbors in order to access their homes. Having said that, we were told by our project planner that they did send specific follow-up correspondence with the affidavits to all neighbors that did submit written letters of concerns. And from our understanding, only one affidavit was returned signed with photos of view blockage.
Yes, that may be the case. There are also letters that have stated some view blockage concerns as well. So I think we will be talking about it amongst ourselves as commissioners, and if we have any clarifications that we can garnish from you, then we may open up the public comments for you to speak up again as applicable. All right, so I'm now going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Taronis?
Yeah, well, just to repeat, I think that the revised design is, the changes are quite substantive. I mean, relative to overall height, reducing the massing of a house, particularly with a flat roofed house, 2 feet 3 inches is, I think, is somewhat striking to me. And so looking at it in that context and looking at it from the angles of the rendering and the exterior elevations, you know, I think that the design has been improved. So, but the issue remains the hillside area permitting. I've been able to visit 3 of the 4 houses that we've received letters from, and you know, I'm going to have to defer to other authorities, city attorney or otherwise, in terms of affidavits or no affidavits or letters, et cetera. But being that we received these letters and we are somewhat struggling to visit homes and try to gain access and see these views, I did everything that I could within reason, I believe, to access these properties. I visited again 2617, 2609, and 2621. I was not able to visit, excuse me, I was not able to visit 2617. I visited 2613, 2609, and 2621, I believe. Yes. And what I was able to observe is that from both 2613 and 2621, I'm not seeing any view blockages issues, quite frankly. You know, what I'm seeing are view blockages that you can only see if you stand far out at the back fence of the rear yard of 2613, for example. The view blockages from 26, or the views from 2621, excuse me, are not blocked by the story poles. There are other issues of tree blockages and vegetation that are obscuring views. So what it comes down to for me is 2609. And in visiting there, I was able to gain access to the living room and view from that primary view window. And the general view that you see is out over the top of adjacent rooftops, as you would expect, being a block away from this property. You see what you would expect to see in terms of normal hillside views over the tops of rooftops of adjacent houses and nearby houses, looking out across those out to the bay. And then you see the story poles of this house. So I still stand by the concept that there is no restriction to two-story houses in neighborhoods, just because that may or may not be the pattern. I think that this is a well-crafted, modern design house, but the issue of the 2 stories really just comes down to the issue of the view blockages with the hillside area ordinance. And so, defaulting to that, I have a hard time moving forward and approving this without some revision, some coordination with that neighbor, or figuring out how something can be done to get us past the hillside area ordinance issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I was also able to gain access to 2609 Truesdale today, and the story poles are very prominent in that view. As Commissioner Torona stated, you do see a lot of sloped roofs, and this being a modern home, it stands out against all those sloped roofs, as well as being higher. The view blockage I would consider significant, because we have denied other projects with, I would say, less of a view blockage from a less prominent window, however, being from a living space. I previously had seen 2613. I've been in the backyard. I don't see any view blockages there. And 2617 was not available today, but I did stand at the corner of Sharon Court, I believe it is, across the street and just up the hill a little ways. And you can clearly see that those story poles potentially would be in the line of sight of something from 2617. So I would have to defer to the affidavit that was signed, that there's a view blockage there. I agree with Commissioner Tronos. The applicant has done a tremendous amount of work to comply with everything that we've asked for. And I think that the house has come a long ways. It's a very, very nice looking modern home. I don't have any objection to the design, but I'm with Commissioner Tronos. It just, the view blockage, I think, is the biggest issue, and I don't know that I can get past that on this particular application.
Commissioner Camerado? Or City Attorney Kane, would you like to speak first?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Just on that issue of the affidavits and so on, the purpose of that was to deal with, in our current shelter-in-place environment, how to get evidence of blockage if we're not able to enter someone's, or should not enter someone's, living space. So that's why that option was generated. I think here, if there's some confusion about, and communication issues where the project may not have had that same information and had the chance to make the same observations that the commissioners may have, we certainly need to allow them that opportunity to evaluate the same information you had and to respond to it before a final decision is made to deny on the basis of the view issue. If the commission were to take a different action, that's fine. But if at some point during your deliberation, you're looking towards denial on that basis, due process requires that the applicant be allowed to evaluate the same information you did.
Thank you. Commissioner Camerado?
Yeah, so I have no problem with the modern design. I think that the applicant has done a great job in reducing the height. I actually walked up and down Martinez and up and down Truesdale, and believe that the house fits in the neighborhood. We have plenty of moderns in the Mills Estates area, throughout Mills Estates, and there's some new construction going on that looks like, or remodels that look like they're going to be more of the modern style. So I have no problem with that. I have no problem with the garage. I was able to access 2613 Truesdale, and was able to view that there is no view obstruction from that property. I did not view 2609 and did not go into the backyard there. So I'd have to ask my fellow commissioners what they saw, but I did take pictures at 2613 last go round and submitted that to the planning department. So, you know, I love the project. I think it's a good looking house. But of course, I think if it is obstructing views, I think that we have to take that into consideration, and we've had to deny other projects because of the view. And that's why it's there.
Thank you. So I will second the comments of my fellow commissioners and add that in my visit to 2613 Truesdale, I did not see that there was any view blockage per se. There's neighbors' vegetation that is currently even blocking that view. It was almost difficult to see the story poles beyond the vegetation. But what was very surprising to me was visiting 2609 Truesdale, which is immediately next door to 2613. What a drastic change there is in terms of the view blockage at that property. And the view in particular is framed between two trees. As you look outside their main living room windows, as well as their one main access point to the backyard through a glass door adjacent to the living room. And it almost, I was joking with the homeowner, it almost looked like it was a deliberate plan to block the full view of this property. And of course, that wasn't the intention, but it is so, like, not perfectly, but it basically blocks their entire distant view of the bay from their backyard and from their living room. So I do agree that the house is beautifully designed, and this applicant has worked very hard. I think that they should take a look at the implications of the project, of their proposed project at 2609 Truesdale, to see the direct results of what they are currently proposing. And I will leave it at that for now. And I see also Commissioner Schmid would like to speak.
Just to echo, I believe that the architect has done a great job at reducing scale. I think that the elevations work really well in showing in relationship to the adjoining neighbors. And I think that the addition of the landscape and everything we asked them to do relative to softening and trying to make the story look better, I think that they've done a great job with that. Unfortunately, I was not able to get into 2609 to be able to see the view blockage, but as we look at some of the other photos and rotate around, I could definitely see where that would be a challenge. So I'll have to defer to others that have been there as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Motions? Commissioner Toronis?
Sorry, I pulled a Commissioner Sargent. Well, sort of taking the some lead or direction from City Attorney, I think, as she mentions, we need to give the applicant the opportunity to see what the views are that we're talking about, in particular from 2609 Truesdale. You know, we have a couple of options. You know, denial without prejudice would avail them or give them the opportunity to appeal the project to the council. But again, that kind of leapfrogs past the concept or the idea of giving them a chance to coordinate and cooperate and view from that neighboring property. So I'm going to make a motion to continue the item with some direction that they coordinate with the neighbor at 2609 to try however they can in safe fashion gain access to see what the view impacts are.
I second that motion. So we have a motion by Commissioner Torrones, seconded by myself, Commissioner Say. All those in, first of all, is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, so all those in favor.
Actually, I'm sorry, through the chair, we need to do a roll call vote.
Yeah, sorry,
because-
I'm sorry. I was just going to say that. I apologize.
No problem. Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye.
and Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-0-1. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council.
Actually, in this
Actually, we
case,
don't have an appeal statement.
It's not appealable yet.
I apologize. So we will now move on to agenda item number 8B, 612 Burlingame Avenue. Were any commissioners able to visit the property? And anybody want to note any ex parte communications regarding the project?
Again, Madam Chair, I'll just note for the record that I wasn't present for the study meeting, but I did read the minutes and watch the video from that meeting.
Thank you. So let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we now hear a staff report?
Yes, the applicant proposes to replace the existing one-story house at 612 Burlingame Avenue with a new two-story single-family dwelling and detached garage. The Planning Commission reviewed this item as a design review study item on May 26th. The applicants submitted a response letter and revised plans, date stamped May 29th, to address the Planning Commission's comments as well as concerns from a neighbor. The staff report packet includes 2 emails that were received prior to the May 26th Planning Commission meeting. Those emails have been included for reference. This concludes the summary of the application, and I'm available for questions of staff.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name, and add any comments that you would like about the project. Is the applicant here?
Hi, this is Chris. I'm the primary designer on the project. And I wanted to just start off with the line items that we addressed per the last meeting. Mostly dealing with privacy concerns from the rear neighbor. To mitigate that aspect, we have eliminated the rear facing deck and changed the patio doors to windows with shutters, and also added a slight roof shed over the patio doors to the extra to the rear yard. Excuse me. So that would be the primary changes on the rear facade. The main change that we were noted on was the main floor plate height, which we have reduced to 9'6". We feel that this does offer a slightly lower main ridge height in keeping with the vernacular of the surrounding houses. The other aspect, well, the other detail that we were asked to provide is a window detail, and to make some minor adjustments here and there. Commissioner Say, I'm sorry, on the living room window, there still is one at 8'6", and it's the frontmost left window that's at 8'6". So you'll probably notice that on the sheet A6. So since I was cranking to get this out on the 11th hour because we only really had one day to turn this around. I apologize that did not get done, but those windows are meant to be at the same head height elevation of 8 feet. The other item that came up from the neighbor, just to maybe finish up on the neighbor, was having to do with concerns about construction schedules, rear fencing. All of these have been handled independently by the owner. As far as my knowledge on that subject matter is concerned. I believe that is the only other issue that came up. The other was landscaping about an existing tree noted at the rear of the house. That tree is planned to be removed. Other than that, I believe those are the main items, and hopefully we've addressed them satisfactorily. And if there is any other questions, I'd love to answer those for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I just had one question. It's on that window detail. I appreciate that. And we discussed it last time that Chris, that is going to be recessed. So but the dimension of the wall, it just says see plans, and I don't see anywhere on there. I'm assuming that's 2x6 exterior walls then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay.
Commissioner Loftus?
Yes, thank you for addressing the lighting issue that I noted last time, that there's lots of lights on the exterior of the building, and these kinds of lights are not typically code compliant. And I've got to see that note K says for the light over the entry, City of Burlingame compliant exterior lighting, which means it'll have the proper cutoff. The note doesn't apply to anything. Well, there's one other one on the front at the front door that's noted, or just to the side of the front door. Can we assume that note would apply to every one of the fixtures all the way around the house?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Commissioner Camerado?
Sorry. I like the changes that were made, and I could see approving this project.
Thank you. And thank you, Chris, for noting my one question about the windows.
Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Thank you for addressing that. So I see that we may have some members of the public who would like to speak on this item. Coanne Skrizniars.
So I have a chat from Ms. Kirchner's, but if she would prefer to speak with either is acceptable.
Yes, hi, this is Coanne Skrizinius' husband, Steve. We live next door at 608 Burlingame Avenue. We've been out of town for the past couple of months due to COVID. Our son is living in the house. We were unaware that the remodel project was even happening. We were told before we left that the house was going to be rented for the next year, and that there might be a construction project after that, but we didn't realize anything was under construction. So this is kind of the first we're hearing about all this. Our concern in looking at the plan is primarily that it looks like the house has been is longer and pulls closer toward the street, and might actually block one of our living room windows and block part of our view. Wondering if there's any possibility of arranging to have the architect or builder come and take a look and see how our views might be impacted from our house, and the light coming into our house, since it's now a 2-story home replacing a 1-story home. Happy to talk to the relevant parties.
Okay, Chris, would you like to address that comment now?
Well, the house on the left actually extends you're the house on the right, correct?
Yes, correct. 608 Burlingame Avenue.
In terms of views, what type of views are you referring to? Because the existing house actually protrudes beyond where we are planning our one-story portion. So I'm not really, I don't know what the reference is with regards to a blocking of a view. A view of where? Of the street? Of a
We currently can see up Burlingame Avenue toward downtown from our living room out the side window. And it looks like the house, the floor plan of the house now extends past our living room. So we wouldn't be able to see down the street any longer.
The house on the left actually protrudes beyond our house line for the front porch. So I'm just wondering about where that view to down Burlingame Avenue is really referenced. I mean, our front porch, which is a one-story element, actually is only impacting that front corner by about, I would suspect, maybe 3 or 4 feet. And then beyond that, the house on the left, I don't know the address, is actually protruding at least 3 feet beyond our front porch house line. So in reality, that house on the left of 612 is really projecting a good, I would say maybe 8-9 feet from the L shape of your living room. I think that's what you're referencing. So there's only an impact of about 3 feet from the front porch element at 612 Burlingame Avenue. Other than that, I don't have anything more to lend on that. However, my comment about the house on the left of 612 still applies. And I'm just wondering why you don't see that house when you look up Burlingame Avenue.
You're talking about the house to the left of 612?
That's correct. I'm looking at the plan right now, and that house is actually protruding a good 2 to 3 feet in front of ours.
Problem.
So, I mean, the impacts of your view line, if you will, might be 3 feet, but beyond that, the house to the left of 612 still applies. I mean, that house is, like I said, it's forward of 612.
You don't have, by any chance, a relative property map that shows the layout of the existing house versus this new house, do you, by any chance?
I believe it's on the survey map of this set of drawings. And that would be, that'll give you a good perspective of the current house, which is in reality in line with the property to the left of 612, which is right now, both of these properties on 612 and the house on the left are in alignment at the front facade wall. Your house on the right is actually has a L-shaped recess. So currently, I'm just wondering why you don't see the house corner on 612 Burlingame Avenue, which is going to be impacting you more than our proposal is on our new house versus the old house.
Sorry, I'm going to have to intervene here. This is public comment. It's not really meant to be a dialogue. So I think both parties have made their concerns, have expressed those, and I think the commission has heard this conversation, but we're not able to really have a prolonged dialogue such as this.
Got it.
Our concern, once again, is that we weren't aware of the work was proceeding and we have not had a chance to review the drawings or the implications to our home. We're not there on the property right this minute and we'll not be back for 2 more weeks. And we would love to have somebody knock on our door. Our son is living there. Nobody has given us any indication of this project going on. It's difficult to talk about specifically without actually looking at the implications of the project on our property.
So just for the record, public notices were sent, including to all of the properties that are being discussed here. The city sends the public notices 10 days prior to the respective meetings. So there would have been a notice sent prior to May 29th, as well as for this meeting. And the city does not have control over whether people are at home. We assume
Sir,
that there is somebody. I'm
We've
just stating for the
reviewing
record that the notices have been duly delivered as required for this meeting.
I don't know that we have any guarantee that there's anything delivered. We've been reviewing every piece of mail with our son twice a week, and that's how we were aware of this meeting. So obviously we were aware of this. We did not receive a notification of the design review. I can't speak to how that happened, but I can tell you we've been looking at every piece of mail that's come to our house. I have business mail coming in there too, so it's imperative for us to be reviewing our mail.
Well, thank you for your comments. I think we could direct you and the applicant, the architect, to work with staff to get together to discuss your issues. That may be something that we can arrange. I think depending on how the commissioners comment as well on this project when we get to the comment stage. I see we have Reynold and Michelle Harbin who would like to speak.
Yes, this is Reynold Harbin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we're the neighbors immediately behind the property. And as we had brought up a couple issues beforehand in the last meeting about the balcony, I just want to let you know that the new owner, Jeremy, promptly reached out to us, solved the balcony problem, and also for the fence, addressed the issues of just the timing of that and was very responsive. So that's my only comment.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the public? Are there any emails that we've received or?
I am not seeing any in the public comment at burlingame.org. There are no further chats, and I do not see any further hands raised.
All right. With that, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments? Commissioner Loftus? Oh, was Commissioner Loftus wanting to speak? Okay, how about Commissioner Schmid?
I was, but I couldn't get to the raised hand.
Oh.
It's hidden. I really like this project. I think it's somehow, it's very traditional, but it's somehow very fresh and new, and it just feels it feels very well thought out. And so I think the one challenge is, first, I will say that views, as I understand it, are not protected outside the Burlingame Hills area. So that's something that I guess the owner and the applicant and the neighbors could get together and talk about that, but it's unlike the meeting we just went through, as far as I know. I think it's unfortunate that the neighbors have been, these are very difficult times with COVID, and it's very unfortunate that the neighbors have been away for as long as they have. I'm sure it's not been a lot of fun unless they're in some really nice place, but it does put them at a disadvantage to not have seen the project, and that seems somehow unfair. Otherwise, I would be making a motion that we approve the project. but it seems like the immediate next door neighbors ought to have the opportunity to comment on it. So I won't make that motion.
Commissioner Schmid?
Yes, I feel like the team did a great job at hearing us in our last meeting and made adjustments. I too like this project quite a bit, and I think it's going to fit nicely. As I look through the site plans, the new house is going essentially where the same footprint is, so it's not moving forward any considerable amount, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to change anything. So I think it's a good project. I agree that it's unfortunate that this is the first time that the neighbor's seeing it, but I also feel as though they've followed the process and that it should probably move forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Camerado?
I keep talking without muting. Okay, sorry about that. So I really like the project. I think they did some really nice changes. They listened to what our requests were. Again, you know, I agree with my fellow commissioners. It is completely unfortunate about the neighbors, but I believe that the applicant has done their duty in moving forward with the process, and staff has done the necessary process on our end, on their end, and I can see approving this project.
Commissioner Torrones?
Thank you. I agree with my fellow commissioners. In particular, I agree with Commissioner Schmid that the applicant has gone through the process. It's a well-crafted design. The only thing we're being asked to consider is design review. And from that standpoint, I could make the findings for approval. As Commissioner Loftus indicated, there is no view protection ordinance down in the flat areas. I agree with the architects or the designers, assessment that the existing house actually footprint is out slightly further than what is being proposed. So in regards to, in regards to adjacencies and impacts on neighbors, we have setback issues, declining height envelope issues, both front and side setbacks in particular. And that addresses the issues of proximity with other properties in these areas. So, and yeah, I agree that it's unfortunate that the neighbors have been away. I would note, perhaps for their knowledge or benefit, there's no construction project happening yet. They're a ways away from that still. But applicants have should take advantage of every opportunity to get things lined up for planning approval so that they could then move forward with construction plans and move forward with their construction permit reviews, so that they could then move forward with their construction contracting procurement, and then ultimately move towards a construction project. So this is just one of the first steps in terms of a project moving forward. So I think that the project is approvable, and I think it should move forward.
Thank you. So I will also agree with my fellow commissioners, and with respects to the processes that the city has taken with respect to the fact that views are not protected in this part of the city. And by what's clear from looking at the survey, that the proposed house is set back further than the existing home on the property. And so it is unfortunate for the neighbor to the right that they haven't had a chance to have some commentary in this process, but I don't see that we can prevent this project from moving forward. It's a beautifully designed home, and the applicant has listened to our comments and done a nice job addressing all of the feedback, including other neighbors in the neighborhood. So Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I wouldn't expect any conversation with the neighbors to lead to major changes to the project. So I'm wondering if we approve it with the sort of condition that when it's possible, the the applicant and the neighbors meet and talk about, is that window in the right place? Is it looking into something that it shouldn't be looking into? So that any minor changes might come back to us as an FYI after such a conversation?
City Attorney Kane?
Yes, I think you can provide that direction. I would avoid making it a formal condition of your motion, however, because when we condition approval on something, it's important to be able to say whether it's happened or not happened. And given the subjective nature of the conversation that you're suggesting between the parties, it would be hard for staff to assess that. So yes, any changes that warrant it need to come back as an FYI for the design review, assuming that this project gets approved. And you can certainly give that encouragement to the applicant, but I wouldn't make it a formal condition.
Understood. So as long, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks. Well, in that case, then I will move that we approve the project with any changes would come back to us as an FYI anyway, I guess. So I move that we approve the project. It's a well-crafted project.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Loftus, seconded by Commissioner Camerado. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, then we will go to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Camerado?
Aye.
Commissioner Gall?
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid?
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis?
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-0-1. And this action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,045, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. So that's all that we have for the regular action items tonight. We do not have any design review study items for the evening for agenda item number 9. And then for agenda item number 10, are there any commissioners' reports? Looks like, oh, yes, Commissioner Taronis.
We had a subcommittee meeting of the Neighborhood Consistency Subcommittee committee. Absent Commissioner Gall for some reason.
Sorry about that.
But we did have a meeting. There will be some items that I think we crafted that staff will be putting together, it seems like, Kevin, and bringing back before the full commission at some point.
Thank you. Any other commissioners' reports? Nope. Then do we have a director's report?
We do. I'll report on the last city council meeting last Monday. They took up the item regarding extension of expiring permits that the Planning Commission had looked at last month. There was a change as it made its way to the council, as we got more feedback from applicants to extend the range out a little bit more in recognizing the hardship on projects right now and kind of the uncertainty of when things will get closer to normal. So the resolution passed by the City Council extends all permits that have expired from the beginning of the shelter-in-place order up through September 30th. So that includes some that are just going to expire in the next couple months. All of those will be extended to December 31st. I think we all hope that by December 31st, things will be functional a little better than they are now. But should we find that there needs to be another resolution in the future, we can look at that again as well. The other item is we know there's a special meeting with the City Council tomorrow night beginning at 6:30. We've heard from lots in the community of interest in facilitating more outdoor dining on particularly on Burlingame Avenue as this is now allowed under the current order from the health official. So the City Council will be accepting a report from the Economic Development Subcommittee on a recommendation and discussing that matter tomorrow evening at 6:30. It will be via Zoom as we're doing these days. So certainly we welcome all of you to join us, as well as members of the community that would be interested in this topic.
Kevin, could I add one more?
Certainly.
And that is that for those who are interested, I know this commission has dealt thoroughly with the wireless infrastructure issue. The city is hosting a webinar, a wireless workshop webinar on Wednesday at 1 p.m. And the link for that and login instructions will be on the city website.
Thank you. All right, so I think that completes all of the reports. And if there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:16 p.m.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Good
Have a good
night.